Welcome back to the Truth Over Comfort show. Today we're going to be discussing the Solomon Islands and China. So this was in the news around March, April, and May. Solomon Islands is a little island in Oceania near Australia. I'll get up a map soon. So there was some leaked security pact between China and the Solomon Islands in March. And everyone kicked up a big fuss. It only really talks about domestic stuff where the Solomon Islands can request for police, armed police, and military personnel to come to the Solomon Islands to help with social order, humanitarian assistance, property, or the lives of their citizens. And again, there's kicked up a massive fuss of they're going to set up a military base right on Australia's border. This is unacceptable. It's upsetting the stability in the Indo-Pacific region. It's upsetting our allies there. This is not on, says the US and then Australia. So the US, the country that's thousands of miles away from this, says a threat. But then when Russia says, yeah, we don't want Ukraine to join NATO because it's on our border. We don't want arms being sold to Ukraine. We don't want them being trained by NATO. And then the West says, that's not a real reason. We're going to keep training them, sending them arms, and yeah, they can join NATO. We don't care they're on your border. That's not a real reason. Well, why can the US be like, oh, this domestic thing, they don't even say anything about a base yet, but say there was a base being set up on the Solomon Islands. Sure, shouldn't be encouraged. Provocative, yeah, because it's near Australia. China isn't right next to it. It's in the region, the Indo-Pacific, but it's not like neighboring. So it shouldn't be encouraged, sure. But the problem is, what? Well, the US has bases where? In Australia, for one, Japan, South Korea, and then all in that region, countless other places. When you try to get a ballpark figure, you're normally get 750 to 800 bases. This isn't a DoD number. It's reported all the time by everyone, alternative media and the mainstream media. The last number I could find was from a 2015 report by the DoD, which I'm going to use and show you soon, where it says they've got just under 500. So it's still a crazy amount, and the most they've got in places is Japan, Germany, and South Korea. So why is the Solomon Islands and China having a security pact, not even a military base, but say it just is for the sake of it? Why is that any different? Why does the US get to do it? Why does the US get to infringe on other people's sovereignty? And Australia say, oh, it's a red line if they set up a military base, like the Obama red line, Syria, chemical weapons. Russia, red line, if they use chemical weapons, no fly zone, or whatever it may be. And the US always we're the protector of the sovereignty of other countries. This is against Australia's sovereignty, New Zealand, and our allies in the region. Just like they're like, oh, Saddam Hussein is a threat to our allies in the Gulf. But that's not you. It's not a threat to you. Well, then why can't Russia say that? Why can't China say that? Why can't Iran say that? And we obviously know their view on sovereignty when they invade other countries with Australia, Britain. Why can America have AUKUS with Australia and Britain? That sort of military alliance against China with the submarines, or the Quad with India, America, Japan, South Korea, and maybe someone else who's meant to be against China. They do all these military drills. The UK sends out the HMS Elizabeth. All this stuff is fine. No, it's just an exercise. It's fine. Anytime China and wants to do it, no, that's a threat to the US national security, 2,000 miles or whatever, thousands of miles away in Oceania. It's just the hypocritism is just insane. And it's funny because I read a lot on the mainstream articles, and we're going to go through it. It's not going to be too long of a video, just going to show you the details. And they never seem to say, well, the US kind of does do the same thing. And even, the ambassador to Australia is asked, will you rule out military force? And he doesn't say no. He doesn't say yes, but he could have said flat out, no, of course we're not going to use military force. He just said, no, we're not going to really comment on that or whatever. So there's loads of mainstream articles who says, US doesn't rule out military force in the Solomon Islands. So just that, the fact they're like, also China and the Solomon Islands have this pact. They're allowed to. They're in the region. The US isn't even in the region. And it's only domestic for now. They say, oh, with regards to that, for now, from these leaked documents, only domestic. What's the big problem? It's like, why do they get to have a say in it? It's kind of just ridiculous, and they never point out in the articles. And if you're gonna, say we're gonna use military force, that's infringing on sovereignty. Like, it's just crazy. So let's get to the story. And so here's the map. So let's get to Australia, and here's the Solomon Islands. So it's kind of near. If there was a military base, you might say provocative, sure, or you could say it's a retaliation because what? You've got South Korea here, there's China, Japan here, Taiwan, meddling country there. And it's kind of hard in this document to, pin down whether like the military bases in Laos, but they have personnel there. So they have people in the country, no matter if it's military base or not, they have influence, and they have them everywhere. We get to that document in a bit. So coming from the Brookings Institute, so this leaked draft comes out. So I'm not going to read it all, but so the government of the People's Republic of China and the government of the Solomon Islands, with the view of strengthening security cooperation on the basis of mutual respect for sovereignty, equality, and mutual benefit, and in compliance with domestic laws and regulations of the parties and applicable to international law, have agreed as follows. The Solomon Islands may, according to its own needs, request China to send police, armed police, military personnel, and other law enforcement armed forces to the Solomon Islands to assist in maintaining social order, protecting people's lives and property, providing humanitarian assistance, carrying out disaster response, or providing assistance on other tasks agreed upon by parties. China, by its own needs, and with the consent of the Solomon Islands, makes ship visits to carry out logistical replenishment in and have stopover and transition in Solomon Islands, and the relevant forces of China can be used to protect the safety of the Chinese personnel and major projects in the Solomon Islands. So I'm not here to even dissect all of this, because my main point is about the hypocrisy, the reaction to this, that National Security Council team is sent out the following articles, questions to the ambassador, the White House release, all this different stuff. You could, make of that what you want. I'm not here to debate, just because I think, Ukraine being on the border of Russia, and that's a solid reason for them not joining, doesn't mean you have to support the invasion of Ukraine because there's reasons. Just because, the US is a hypocrite and has all these things, doesn't mean you should encourage militarism, and then China doing all this stuff, a new Cold War. This seems to be coming more than not. So that came from the Brookings Institute. This is the language they used about, the domestic and the logistical support. It's all in the mainstream articles, and it hasn't, been disputed. So this is a US press release in 2022, in April 22nd. So on the April the 22nd, a high-level US delegation led by the National Security Council. Remember the National Security Council, which is like the president's, team basically for national security issues and, this sort of stuff. Indo-Pacific Coordinator Kurt Campbell, Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs Daniel Crittenbrink, Deputy Commander of Indo-Pacific, it's like their CENTCOM and AFRICOM, Lieutenant General Stefan Slenka, and blah, blah, blah. The delegation met for 90 minutes with Prime Minister Manasa Sogavara, which is the Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands, along with 24 members of his cabinet and senior staff. While there, the delegation also met with prominent religious leaders on the island and key members of the political opposition. The visit to the Solomon Islands was the final leg of the delegation's trip across the Pacific. It followed stops in Hawaii, where the delegation met with senior officials from Australia, Japan, and New Zealand and Fiji, where they met with Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama, as well as the leadership of the Pacific Island Forum, and held the, so we can skip this bit. In the meeting with Solomon Islands Prime Minister Sogavara, the delegation reiterated the key priorities animating the trip and also outlined the specific steps the US would take to advance the welfare of the Solomon Islands. The US will expedite the opening of an embassy in Solomon Islands, advance cooperation on unexploded ordnance, launch a program on maritime domain awareness, dispatch the Mercy Hospital ship to address public health, and advance dialogue on the return of the Peace Corps, deliver additional vaccines, so all this stuff. The US respects the rights of nations to make sovereign decisions in the best interest of their people. The two sides engaged in substantial discussion around the recently signed security agreement between the Solomon Islands and China. The Solomon Islands representative indicated the agreement had solely domestic applications, as the what it said in that the photo from Brookings Institute about sending, you know, police and military personnel. But the US delegation know there are potential regional security implications of the accord, including for the US and its allies and partners. So the US, why does it have security implication for the US? No, for their allies, maybe. The US delegation outlined clear areas of concern with respect to the purpose, scope, and transparency of the agreement. If steps are taken to establish a de facto permanent military presence, power projection capabilities, or military installation, the delegation noted that the United States would then have significant concerns and respond accordingly. I don't know what that respond accordingly means. It's kind of vague how they left it, but what if they set up a base and they're like, it's not going? A coup? An invasion? Sanctions? Whatever it may be. In response to these unrealistic concerns, Prime Minister Sogavara reiterated specific assurance there would be no military base, no long-term presence, and no power projection capability, as he has said publicly. The US emphasized it will follow developments closely in consultation with regional partners. So I'm going to leave that one for there because it carries on going this. So this is a Guardian article, and I'm going to kind of use this to go to the ambassador who's getting questioned and show you the bits that he said from this article. So, US won't rule out military action if China establishes base in the Solomon Islands. So I saw that, and I wanted to see for myself, because, you know, they snippet bits out of press releases and press conferences where they're speaking, and I'm like, I kind of want to know what they actually said. So don't worry, I'll show you that too. One of the most senior US officials in the Pacific has refused to rule out military action against the Solomon Islands if it were for China, allow China to establish a military base there, saying the security deal between the countries presented potential regional security implications for the US and other allies. Ambassador Daniel Crittenbrink, Assistant Secretary of State for Eastern, Asian and Pacific Affairs, was part of a high-level US delegation to the Pacific last week. So that was the thing we just read from the press release. So he said the US team, which also included the National Security Council Coordinator for Indo-Pacific Affairs, Kurt Campbell, had a 90-minute constructive and candid meeting with the Prime Minister. Okay, so we sort of just went over that. So here's the bit, it's just about domestic. On Tuesday, Crittenberg reiterated the US willingness to act in the region if a military base were established. Of course, we have to respect for the Solomon Islands sovereignty, but we also want to let them know if steps were taken to establish a de facto permanent military base, power projection capabilities, or a military installation, then we would have significant concerns and would be very naturally to respond to these concerns. So let's just find that. So this is teleconference with Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, Daniel Crittenberg, in April, and this is the US State Department. So this is where they just got that from. So next time I'll just read it from here, but the Guardian article is a good, sums it up well. In a statement last week, sorry, I skipped a bit. When asked what the response would involve, look, I'm not going to speculate. I'm not in a position to talk about what the United States may or may not do in this situation. Pressed on whether he would rule out the prospect of the US taking military action against the Solomon Islands were a naval base to be established, and if not, whether he was comfortable with Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison talking of their base being a red line for Australia, he said, I don't have a lot beyond what he said. So we're going to go to that quickly. Okay, here it is. So I'll even get up the recording in a second of this. They actually put it on SoundCloud, which is pretty funny, to be honest, the US. Hi, thank you so much for your time. Our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has said he shares the same red lines that the US... Actually, sorry, let's go to the video first, and then we can see... Sorry, I'll read it back to you.
From The Guardian, Australia, in Sydney. Kate, please go ahead.
Hi. Thank you so much for your time. Our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has said he shares the same red line that the US has on the issue of a potential military base permanent presence of China in Solomon Islands. Given you're not specifying what the US response would be if a base is established, are you uncomfortable with the connotations of red line that is being discussed? And can you rule out that the US would take military action against Solomon Islands if China established a base there?
Well, Kate, thanks very much for your question. I think I don't have a lot to add beyond what I've already stated. Again, we've tried to be very clear with our friends in the Solomon Islands. I've tried to be very clear with friends on this call tonight that we reiterated our respect for sovereignty of the Solomon Islands. But we also outlined the potential again, regional security implications of this security agreement that it has signed with the People's Republic of China. We've outlined the specific concerns that we have regarding the potential for permanent military presence or power projection capabilities or military installation, and we've indicated that should those events come to pass, that the United States would respond accordingly. And I think it's best if I leave it at that and not speculate on what that may or may not mean.
I'll read that back to you. It was kind of clear to hear the second part, but maybe not the first part. So someone's called in, Kate Lyons from The Guardian, Australia, in Sydney. Hi, thank you so much for your time. Our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, Australia, has said he shares the same red lines the US has on the issue of a potential military base, a permanent presence of China in Solomon Islands. Given you're not specifying what the US response would be if a base is established, are you comfortable with the connotations of red lines that is being discussed? And can you rule out that the US would take military action against the Solomon Islands if China established a base there? Ambassador Crittenberg. Well, Kate, thanks very much for your question. I don't think I have a lot to add beyond what I've already stated. Again, we've tried to be very clear with our friends in the Solomon Islands, and I've been trying to be very clear with our friends on this call tonight that we reiterated our respect for the sovereignty of the Solomon Islands, unless we don't like what they're doing. But we also outlined the potential regional security implications of this security agreement that has signed with the People's Republic of China. Not the security agreement with AUKUS. No, that's fine. We've outlined the specific concerns that we have regarding for the potential for a permanent military presence or power projection capabilities or a military installation, and we've indicated that should those events come to pass, that the US would respond accordingly, as they said in that press release. So he's referring back to that. And I think it's best if I leave it at that and not speculate on may or may not mean. So he's kind of saying, I don't want to speculate because I don't know. We probably don't actually know what we're going to do. Obviously they're probably not going to rule it out. I mean, imagine they did actually just straight up invade Solomon Islands and they say it was an infringement against our allies and sovereignty. So we destroyed the sovereignty of one country, and then Russia's like, hey, hey, looks like we can agree on something. Was some islands on your border? Oh no, right. Yeah, because if someone made a military pact with Mexico or Canada, I'm sure you'd be fine with that, wouldn't you? Just like you was fine with Cuba being allied with the Soviet Union. Oh wait, no, what was that thing called? The Bay of Pigs or Operation Northwards. Oh, I did a video on that the other day. 1962 document, false flag terrorism. Remember that? Mock funerals. Yeah. You remember that. We're all good. It's just crazy. It's actually crazy. So that was on SoundCloud. It was just kind of funny. So let's just see if anything else is worth. So no, that was just a bit. The red line was what Scott Morrison, the Australian Prime Minister, said. If they set up a military base, that's the red line. Like what? You're going to invade China? Well, I don't think so. Actually, I'll even show you the audio bit as at the top. Click here to listen to the file, and it goes to SoundCloud, which is funny. They got their little Asia. Visit Asia-Pacific Media Hub. Hey, they got their SoundCloud. They're branching out to the new generation. Yeah, it's great of them. And then, so this is a BBC article, sort of similar thing. And so this is the Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands saying, we deplore the continual demonstration of lack of trust by the concerned parties and tacit warning of military intervention in the Solomon Islands if their national interest is undermined in Solomon Islands. In other words, we are threatened with invasion. And then Morrison said, of course we haven't threatened that, but we haven't ruled it out. You haven't said, oh no, just left it open, haven't you? So this is just AUKUS, just an example, obviously, of the agreement. Partnership will work to protect our people and support a peaceful and rules-based international order. See, a lot of people think the rules-based international order is like the US version of, where other countries like we need to follow international law. They say the rules-based international order, which is the West, the US, the Anglosphere order, that order. First initiative will be collaboration on future nuclear-powered submarines for the Royal Australian Navy. You mean, those stealthy things that go really far under the water, can't be detected, really near, who is it? China? No, I'm sure they're not going to be used for that. No. That's not provocation. The new alliance will bolster the integrated review commitment to strengthen alliances with the like-minded allies and deepen ties in the Indo-Pacific. Oh, Indo-Pacific region. So why strengthening allies against China? Interesting. Anyway. So this is from the DoD. Everything goes in the show notes as normal. The DoD manages a worldwide real property portfolio. They're like playing Monopoly with all the pieces in different countries, like it's real estate. Worldwide real property portfolio that spans all 50 states of the US, territories with outlying areas, and 42 foreign countries. It's definitely more than that now. Oh, they're lying. They're definitely lying there. 42, there's definitely more, even if it's just one base. The majority of the foreign sites are located in Germany, 181, Japan, 122, South Korea, 83. So 2 of those countries right near China. And between that, what have they got? They've got over 205 bases, sites, because they're not all like full-on military bases. There's lots of different things, but a lot of personnel there. And they got 105 sites really near China in just 2 countries. Just 2. Oh, that's not a threat at all, is it? See if there's anything else worth just showing here. So this, look, if you go to Germany, actually. So these are all their different bases. And then it's got like military personnel. It's just crazy amount. Look how far Germany goes down. Just all military bases in Germany. So World War II ends in 1945, and all these bases are still in Japan and Germany because of World War II. So they're basically an occupier of that country. South Korea. Wonder why they're there. Oh, I think the Korean War. was a long time ago, but they're still there. And you know where they're like, oh, you know, if this is a long-standing presence in the Solomon Islands from China and they're not gone within the time, that is not acceptable. 1945, Germany are allies, clearly allied. They're not going to do another Hitler thing. Like, this is still Germany, isn't it? It's insane. Oh, let's do some other countries. Laos. They're there. Whether these are, you know, bases, it doesn't got a base name. Who else? Cambodia. Great. Malaysia. How do you spell Malaysia? Yeah, they're there. Vietnam. Great. It's got stuff everywhere. Guam. Where's Guam? Oh, it's near here somewhere. Zoom out. So Guam is here. So the military base is there, which is kind of near China again. Quite a few. Navy. And they got a lot of Navy stuff there. Wonder why, because it's a tiny little island in the sea. So I'm not gonna keep going through this. You get the point. They got bases all around them. They're in this hissy fit about this thing with this tiny island because they have this domestic agreement, even if it's more than theirs. I'm not, you know, the hypocrisy is kind of ridiculous. And they can do these press conferences about AUKUS and say it's just all fine and dandy. Like, it's a meme. It's Cold War is happening, and it's not good for us. It's just good for, you know, military budgets, basically, in the military industrial complex, and everything else benefits there with the arms corporation and stuff. I bet they were loving that little provocation there, weren't they? But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. I've gone over a decent amount of information, to be fair. I think I've done a fairly thorough job. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you soon on the Truth Over Comfort show.